Chapter 6. Dario Cox gazed at the sky day and night, in the vain hope of spotting a spacecraft en route to a nearby planet. Therefore, when the moment came, he had arranged a small metallic box he found in one of his pockets, a gift from Franz Schwarz, and had solid reasons to believe it contained a powerful explosive and atomic charge. He possessed a Yotamite gun and Sonda's gun, which fired atomic projectiles, with which he planned to shoot the box and create a thermonuclear explosion capable of attracting the attention of the presumed cosmic ship. But days were passing, and external help was not coming. Nevertheless, Dario took great comfort in the fact that Sonda kept him informed about what was happening on Earth and the fate of his companions. This continuous information made him suffer deeply, as evil had triumphed on Earth, and Hugh Paul was committing the most imaginable atrocities. Sonda had set herself an unachievable goal. With the help of 8 robots, she planned to build a spacecraft. She spent her time, day and night, working and searching for materials to melt. For her part, the robots worked tirelessly because machines like them, well built and lubricated, did not need rest. Dario marveled at watching them operate, slowly but surely, obeying the orders transmitted by Sonda. When she came to rest at the house, she assigned the robots an extended task, which they executed automatically. But Dario did not trust that Sonda and her 8 mechanical minions could accomplish such a monumental task, although he wished it with all his heart. Sonda had told him that her companions Basil and Mark were prisoners in an underwater jail in the South China Sea, and Karen, along with Schwartz, was also a prisoner, working in a laboratory on the Mozambique coast, where they were tortured to force them to reveal what they knew about the anti-gravity studied on Sonda's Valther II. On the other hand, Earth was engulfed in a fratricidal war ignited by the ambition of a madman, Hugh Paul, who aspired to total dominance of the solar system. When the fanatic Australian secret agent staged his coup following Sonda's assassination attempt, Paul destroyed his enemy's envoy and placed a companion with a destroyed head in his office to pass him off as himself and buy time. He was supported by almost all Earth's military centers, which he had bought with the gold Sonda provided in exchange for materials to build his spaceship. However, someone did not agree, someone who unknowingly saved the life of his subordinate, Dario Cox, and the beautiful Sonda. This was General Clark Sutton of the United Nations Space Exploration Forces, who, when he staged the coup, was suspended in the air, powerless to attack Sonda's ship. Several hours after the attack, the flotilla stabilized, and Sutton was able to move again to return to his base. Upon arrival, he was informed of the global sedition. Nevertheless, Sutton ordered his troops to remain on alert. Finally, the order came from Brasilia instructing him to join the New World Organization. But the general replied that if Hugh Paul had declared himself head of all governments, he declared the formation of a military junta for the salvation and restoration of freedom of rights, and considered Hugh Paul a traitor and charlatan. Sutton ordered abandoning the Mauna Loa base, arresting all of Paul's accomplices among his troops, executing them without further ado, and took control of the airspace, monitoring the main spaceports and airports worldwide. Upon receiving the news, Hugh Paul jumped in his seat and ordered the immediate arrest of the proud general. But it was already too late. War had erupted, and death descended from the clouds, sparing only civilian populations, but ravaging the corps and barracks of the rebel troops. Fighting also occurred against other divisions of aerial forces under Paul's command, but Sutton was an old fox and managed to seize control of the air, which is why Hugh Paul could not send a spacecraft to Vesta to capture Sonda and Dario. On the other hand, Mason could not explain to Paul the secret of anti-gravity, because if he had known, he could have destroyed Sutton's nefarious and angry army. Paul's situation was precarious, however. Mason knew nothing. The robots couldn't speak. Tyrrell O'Brien and the other American pilot knew nothing, although they were imprisoned. As for Karen and Schwartz, Paul ordered them to be treated harshly to extract confessions, but he succeeded in nothing. Hugh Paul sensed he was losing ground, because he had news that in many cities in America and Europe, aerial forces were being aided, contrary to his orders. Moreover, the messages received from interplanetary colonies were not very encouraging. On Mars, they were on alert. Venus, Mercury, and the small colony on Saturn were indifferent, and Jupiter's expeditionary forces couldn't be counted on. The worst for Paul was that on the Moon, 2 squadrons of spacecraft, with 100 commercial and combat ships, sided with Sutton out of simple affinity. Such was the panorama in those days of August in the year 2306 of the Christian era, encompassing Earth's dominance and its interplanetary colonies. And the struggle continued without tipping to one side or the other. And all this was known to Cox because Sonda, through her remote controls, was aware of everything, and much more that she preferred to keep to herself. Days were passing, but Dario remained locked in the house built with coal sheets, traversing every angle like a caged lion without even looking at Sonda, who, more beautiful each day, sought to bring him all kinds of food chosen by herself in the forests. It seemed the Antares woman worked hard, far from Dario's sight, but he was consumed by the slowness of the work. For Vesta's days, lasting about 3 hours, seemed like 24 or perhaps more. One day, while he was kissing her, trying to forget everything with that marvelous woman, Sonda said to him, "The General Sutton's troops have suffered a great setback. More than 100 of their combat spacecraft have been destroyed with atomic projectiles directed by radio. Paul, who was in Bombay, has disappeared because Sutton, furious over the turn of events, had the capital of India destroyed. I can tell you that Paul hasn't died, and that he's preparing a new surprise attack against the aerial forces." "Shut up, Sonda. Don't tell me anything else," shouted Dario, desperate. "If it's true that, through your diabolical telepathy, you can know so many things, tell me at least when I'm going to die, because I don't want to keep living in this uncertainty." Sonda looked at him with a sad expression. Then she gently approached and wrapped her arms around his neck. They were inside the house, so Dario didn't need to wear his space suit. "Calm down, my love," she said softly. "Calm yourself now. Don't you have me? Don't you love your Sonda anymore?" For a few moments she remained close to him, tightly embraced against her strong chest. But suddenly, he broke away violently and pushed her, pulling her away from himself. Sonda lost her balance, surprised by that unexpected brutality, and fell to the ground. With wide eyes, she saw him rubbing his mouth with the back of his hand, as if trying to erase her kisses. A tear shimmered in her eyes. But Dario recovered from his outburst immediately, understanding the harm he had caused to the one he loved so much. And, morally and physically devastated, he knelt beside her and held her in his arms. "Sonda, my dear, forgive me. Do you want to forgive me? I don't know what's happening to me. I'm not in control of myself." Sonda seemed to have turned into something stone-like. She said nothing, but persuasively released his embrace and stood up. Silent and deeply pained in her soul, she left the house without uttering a word. Dario was left with shattered nerves, pacing up and down in large strides. He intended to put on the spacesuit and run after Sonda, to beg her forgiveness on his knees. But something like pride held him back. Sonda did not return the next day, nor the day after, nor for several days. This prolonged absence Dario attributed to spite, resentment, and he felt annoyed in turn. And out of pride, more than logical and sensible reasoning, he did not want to go looking for her either. A week later, according to his own time calculations, a robot appeared that, peering through the window, gestured for him to come out. "Sonda is calling me," he thought excitedly. In much less time than it takes to describe it, Dario donned the heavy radiation-proof spacesuit, put on the transparent helmet, and followed the robot. The first glance at the place where the robots and Sonda had been working left him open-mouthed with pure astonishment. There, on 4 black pillars just centimeters above the ground, was a bright but small spaceship, whose silhouette reminded him of nothing from Earth. It was like a double-rounded plate, and had large metal tubes above and below the outer fuselage. Dario was amazed at Sonda's work, and wondered more than 100 times how and with what she had managed to create it. Then he saw Sonda sitting on a rustic bench beside the strange apparatus. He saw that she had one leg bent, and the other rigid, wrapped in a kind of bandage or metal wrap. "What happened to you, Sonda?" asked Dario, anguished. "I got a slight injury, Dario," she responded gravely, looking at her stretched leg. "I hope it's nothing. If I had medication, I'd already have healed." What do you think of what we've done? Sonda, with her arm extended, pointed to the apparatus, which had a diameter of no more than 5 meters and a height of 2 meters at its widest part. Truly astonishing. And do you think it's capable of traversing space? It has a small atomic engine and operates on gravitational propulsion, but concentrically, although it develops a speed of several thousand kilometers per second. It was necessary to sacrifice 2 robots to use their electronic mechanisms. Isn't this what you wanted, Dario? These last words were spoken with an accent that squeezed Dario's heart, as they carried impressive pathos. Sonda, I want to tell you that I regret what happened the other day. I wanted to come looking for you, but... Don't continue, Dario. I'll tell you that we are very different from each other. We belong to different worlds. Maybe it was my fault. I shouldn't have succumbed to the sensory emotions of my organism. You see what happened in a moment of carelessness. Don't tell me anything. It's better this way. Go, take that device and return to your world. One of my mechanical servers will explain its operation during the journey. I'll leave you the magnetic eye so you can help your companions. You'll see how useful it is on Earth to defeat your enemies. I only want to ask you to kill Paul and avenge my husband. Swear that you'll exterminate that viper and scatter his remains across the 4 seas so that chance cannot bring them together again. Swear it, Dario Cox. I'll give you freedom in return. I'm not going to leave you here, Sonda, shouted Dario, regaining his voice. You have to come with me. I don't want to, she exclaimed, turning her twinkling eyes toward the Brazilian. I must die here and know nothing more about anyone. Go with Karen Vasiev, for you've received enough flattery from me. What does that woman have to do with us? Asked Dario, his voice trembling. There's nothing between us, exclaimed Sonda. I've been stupid and nothing more. But I loved you, Dario, and I will continue to love you. You can't change the impulses of the heart. We still haven't learned to turn the cardiac viscera into a mathematical brain. Now go, Dario, go and let me die in peace. Then he realized how much that extraterrestrial woman was worth, capable of sacrificing an entire life dedicated to the good of the universe. Dario went to her and held her in his arms. Sonda sobbed and tears appeared in her eyes. I love you, my love, he said, his voice hoarse. She didn't respond. Her face was tense, and a deep exhaustion surrounded her celestial eyes. He saw her move her mouth again and again. Then he took her in his arms and led her to the spaceship without letting her speak, and managed to place her in the apparatus. He saw a blue garment lying in a corner, which had served to protect a sacrificed robot, and took it. He tangled it and placed it under Sonda's head. He also noticed at the same time that the magnetic eye on her oblong box was blinking repeatedly, perhaps sending him a message he couldn't understand. Don't move, dear. I'm going to the Domo, home in Esperanto, in search of food, and soon we'll leave here, he said. She tried to smile very weakly, making Dario suspect that Sonda had made a great effort over the past week. But since he didn't see her move, Dario left the apparatus quite confidently. The robots were still there, like petrified, without a master to direct them. Their ridiculous blue figures, with periscopes protruding from their heads, gave them a comical ghostly appearance. And yet, Sonda couldn't count on better servants than those. In the Domo, that served as a refuge during those days, he found and gathered all the food she had been sending him. He wrapped everything with Sonda's crimson cloak and quickly returned to the place where the flying apparatus was. He was surprised to now see the robots near the entrance hatch, and when he approached, he saw Sonda leaning outward and talking to them in her strange language. Then he tried in vain to understand what she was saying. He thought Sonda had a cold, expressionless, and unchanging face. But then he was glad to see her smile a bit. Subsequently, the robots turned around and walked away on either side. Goodbye, my friends, he now picked up in his mind, like when Sonda spoke to him. Yes, I can't fight the impossible. It's clumsy to do so. I'll go with you, and you'll see that the heart isn't everything in an Antares woman. Maybe you'll regret forcing me to do this. Where are your servants going? I've given them all freedom. They are very perfect machines, but maybe they can understand what freedom is. Poor things, they've served me very well for many years. Then they'll realize that without me, they can't live and will end up destroyed in some abyss, or corroded by acids and oxides. Ah, Dario, take it easy, but I have to give you bad news. Tyrrell and O'Brien are going to be executed. They tried to escape from the underwater prison of Chowlung, and Paul ordered their immediate death. Good heavens, exclaimed Dario, distraught. We must hurry, Sonda. Do you think this wreck can withstand a trip to Earth? You must stay within Mars' orbits first, and then traverse the gravitational field with all the energy we have. I've calculated the flight duration to 3 days, but if we don't make it, we'll remain as we are now, or worse. But listen to me, Dario, don't take me. I'll be a hindrance, causing you troubles and impediments that will make it difficult for you to save your friends. On the other hand, there's Karen Vasiev, who sighs for you all the time. She's a great woman of your class and also needs your help. Let me, Dario. You have instructions recorded on a magnetic tape, but you can still take a robot to help you. Never, Sonda. We'll go together. We'll either die or be saved together, he responded stubbornly. You'll die, Dario, I'm sure, she exclaimed. But she didn't have the courage to reveal her secret, because deep down she was a woman, and that burly earthling was too much a man for her. Unable to keep talking, she burst into tears. Dario caressed her face and begged her to explain how the flight mechanism worked. She tried to calm herself, and between sobs of sorrow began to explain the devices. Dario was anxious and agitated, but had great confidence in himself and in that woman who had been so fragile to him. However, when he turned the contact and ignition key of the reaction chamber, and a shake moved the apparatus, he sighed and calmed down. He looked outside through the telescope observation lens, and saw Vesta's ground moving away below them, like a curtain of flames rising from the rotating nozzles. He also saw the immobile robots, as if their mechanical souls sensed that the apparatus they had built was moving away with the woman who had given them life. They're down there, Sonda. The robots, and it seems they want to say goodbye to you. She, lying on the ground, turned her face against the metallic partition, and her body convulsively trembled. She said in a soft voice, Everything that bound me to my world is broken, Dario. Soon I'll die too, and go to reunite with my own in God's eternal spaces. I'll see Sando, who was so good to me, and who I've been so unfaithful to. And her voice faded like a breath of ice. Like a firebolt, the small saucer soared through the cosmos toward the red ball of Mars, which towards the universe's confines looked like a small disk surrounded by 2 tiny bright suns. But in the asteroid belt, the silence of the dead worlds was absolute, impressive, as if all of them, pebbles and immense masses, were watching the metallic pygmy leaving Vesta heading into eternity, into the beyond.